everyone, welcome hunters one and all. Let's talk about your best friends, your weapon of choice, the extension of yourself that you feel so at home with it's not uncommon to wake up and find it next to you after, that's probably just me now that I think about it, isn't it? The point is, your weapon choice in Monster Hunter is a big deal. It's slightly less of a big deal in World because you can change mid-mission, but I still think it's fair to say everyone has their favourite weapon. And with World giving every weapon a new sheen of polish, some badass animations, and just some new tricks that are just, oh, that's cool, I imagine we might have some people who are changing from what they're used to hunting with. I, myself, have stayed faithful to what you've probably have already guessed is going to be my number one, but I'll admit I have looked at other weapons. I'm only human. So let's talk about my favourites, hopefully your favourites in the comments too, and a lot of you, might come away from this deciding on a new weapon to try and use based on what I say about it, so it should be a lot of fun. I just like talking about this game and this world and everything in it with you guys, I really do. So beginning at number 5 with the longsword, which, you might have guessed by the longsword gameplay in the background. This weapon, actually I have the second most time with. I used it a lot, especially in the earlier games, and I find myself kind of drawn to it again in World. It's just so fluid and precise, and I think that makes it supremely satisfying. It has this kind of flow to it that makes you feel just so skilled as a fighter that you're just weaving like water in and around the monster and slicing it to bits with powerful hits, unleashing the demon combo and just absolutely taking something apart. It, to me, offers the sort of speed and maneuverability of like the sword and shield-y dual blades, albeit not as fast, with kind of the power of the greatsword, albeit not as powerful. It's a beautiful middle ground weapon that kind of gives you a real feeling of control over the fight without really sacrificing any one thing too much, and it's just a really satisfying thing. I don't like the sheath. It bugs me always seeing it on my back, which is honestly one of the reasons I don't use it that much, but any weapon that lets me do, well, this is an okay weapon in my book. So yeah, longsword. Number 4 then, something I've put a lot of time in during the betas, are the dual swords. And these things are just ridiculous. They just let you go mental. They are the epiphany of die, 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 die. Just ridiculousness constantly. Slashing, 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 stabbing, maiming. Why won't you die? And it's just so visceral and energetic, and you really feel like your character is a psychopath with these things. I mean, the best way to kind of put it across is, and there's something really fun about that. There's just so many attacks so constantly. You never stop. It's so mobile. The dashing everywhere, going demon mode, going full freaking anime on it, holding your swords backwards, Naruto running, Attack on Titan spinning Beybladey down the back of monsters. It's just so fast and kinetic in every single one of its motions, and you can't help but feel like, yes, while doing it. I personally, though, don't like how ineffective each individual hit feels, despite how many of them. I feel it's a little bit too but I cannot deny that if you like being super fast in all manner of the word, these are the weapons for you. They're just fun. So now we have my guilty pleasure weapon in number 3, and it is the bow. And why is it my guilty pleasure? Because I keep using it despite absolutely sucking and failing completely to get any better with it. And I can't explain why. I just don't mesh with it. Yeah, I really enjoy it, so I kind of keep doing it. Essentially, if I ever join a hunt with you and you see me walk out with the bow, you're in for an interesting time. Granted, the most common reaction to me using the bow generally is, Please don't, but I can't help it, right? There's something romantically wonderful about the classic hunter with the bow that I can't escape from, and in World specifically, oh, it is satisfying. The Dragon Piercer, scraping the arrow round, sparks going everywhere, charging it up, firing it, and hearing the sound. Every single one of those fireworky dun as your Dragon Piercer goes from head to tail, annihilating the monster from the inside, doing ridiculous damage. Every single one of those sounds kind of just gives me tingles, and I should have expressed that differently. But it does remain super fun. It is a ridiculously high skill cap weapon, at least in my eyes, and when I watch someone who is a master of it take apart a monster at range with effortless grace using a hailstorm of well-placed arrows like it's nothing, I'm like, oh, I want to be that good. Obviously, every weapon you can watch someone that good and be super impressed, but the bow for me, I almost feel like looks the most impressive when you watch someone super speed kill with it, but obviously that's just a personal thing. But essentially, I just can't deny the classic hunter with bow and the barrels of iron spiky balls you can drop on things, the coatings for any given situation giving you a range of options. It's quite a speedy weapon for a ranged weapon, lets you be quite agile, dodge around, get opportune shots, aim at specific places that you really want to go for. And it just gives you a lot of options and is a really cool range weapon to take in with a group of melees. I'm not a fan of soloing with it, but I just love every now and then joining a group hunt, sitting back and just shooting the thing and getting badass end screens. Next up then, Insect Glaive. Kinda sums up how I generally interact with this weapon. I mean, honestly, it's the only weapon apart from my first that I consider myself okay on. It's the only other weapon apart from what's first that I would, well, fight Nergigante with, for example, and do kind of okay. But it's also a weapon that remains somehow an eternal mystery to me, no matter how much I try and understand it. I always feel like I'm doing something wrong while using the weapon, despite killing things. I guess I feel like I could be doing a lot better. I imagine a lot of Glaive mains will watch this gameplay and be like, oh! I mean, initially first, it's just cool having a staffy weapon with two blades on the end, right? It's just a cool weapon, and a lot of people like it for that reason, coupled with having a giant insect on your arm that you can send after monsters and extract their essence and fuse it into yourself and almost fight with stolen strength. Yeah, it's got a cool little theme going for it. You add in the acrobatical moves that it lets you do, jumping into the air, and World's Edition of letting you go absolutely mental, staying in the air for ages, doing some crazy spectacle moves that just make you feel so badass as you, like, spiral chop down on the back of a monster and get your mount off. I mean, it's just a visceral thrill to play with this thing. It really, really is. And when you get a load of buffs running, all three of them, and start going mental, you can pump out some ridiculous numbers. So the Insect Glaive, then, you have a little insect on your arm, and you choose and aim at a part of the monster's body. Where it hits will tell the insect, go extract there. So for example, if you hit the head, it will go up to the monster's head, bite it a little bit, do some damage, and then come back to you with a buff. Generally, the head will give red buff, which is a damage increase. You choose the tail or the wings, and you'll get white buff, which is mobility, or the body, which is orange, which is more defensive. And you kind of want to get all three and enter a super powerful state. But outside of that, it's just a super quick weapon with a lot of reach and a lot of potential for really cool plays. The issue is, I can't resist those cool plays. If I play grounded and sensible and just fight with it a little bit more, I guess normally, I do fine. But I cannot resist, oh, he's doing a move. I'm not going to dodge it by rolling and guarantee safety. I'm going to try and launch myself into the air and jump over it like a badass. Oh, I still got hit. Granted, I do feel a lot of the time you do you almost unfairly get hit with the glaive. Like, it looks very much like you should be fine, yet you get smacked around anyway, and it kind of really angers me. But then again, I do see a lot of really good glaive users do some incredible aerial dodges that just make them look so suave and make the monster look so foolish. So maybe I'm just bad, and maybe that is what bugs me about this weapon. The fact that I really should just play a bit more normally and safe, but I can't resist trying to be really cool when I can't pull it off that well and end up frustrating myself, because I think the glaive is a weapon where you look like you're doing so much more than maybe you are, and that's maybe a trap to fall into. You get glaive users that try and just spam mount, launch attack, launch attack, launch attack, and not using the actually really solid DPS you have going, especially once you have red buff. Well, primarily only when you have red buff from my experience, but I don't know, I guess inherently the glaive is a really strong, versatile weapon that brings a lot to a hunt, lets you do kind of everything, fairly good damage, but fairly good speed, but fairly good mobility. You look just effortlessly badass, even if you have no idea what you're actually doing, and you have a kind of satisfying buff management mechanic. It's just a really well-rounded, fun experience to be the master of the glaive. And I guess inherently that's what matters, right? You're playing a game, you want to have fun, and if something just gives you fun, irrelevant of how good you are at it, that's worth a lot. But not as much as my favorite and best weapon, the Greatsword. So why do I find the Greatsword, well, so great? I mean, there's sort of a lot of reasons. But one huge one is, well, fighting monsters with the Greatsword. I like to imagine what they might be thinking. I am no gigantic little human. You think you're going to hurt me? I don't care how comically oversized you're. Holy shit. And it just, every time, no matter who it is, they get a different voice, a different, and it's magic to me. It really is. That moment, that critical moment when the most powerful charge attack connects with what I'm fighting and it recoils away from me like, oh! Jesus! Like, it's just astounding that the power that you brought, that you just crash down and break apart or cut off a tail or flinch or knock it over, and because of the boom of the Greatsword when it connects, it really sells it. When you're there with a smaller weapon, it doesn't have as much satisfaction to me, and it really is satisfaction. Like, I'm there if I'm cutting you loads and loads and loads. I don't really feel like I should knock you over, you giant, adorably terrifying monster, you. And when you do the same thing but with a Greatsword, yeah, I completely buy that this huge weapon with the huge power that I just put behind it just sent you sprawling on the ground from the impact. Because to me, showing up to fight something as big as, well, Nergigante, for example, with, like, a sword and shield, it kind of feels like you've shown up to a gunfight with a knife, mate. I realize there's nothing wrong with the erstwhile death by 1,000 cuts, you know, you make it bleed, you injure it all over, you tire it out, it exhausts it, you completely overwhelm it with constant minor injuries, and that's absolutely fine. Hell, it works, right? You could totally bring down an animal like that, and hell, it's actually probably more sensible a plan than carrying something that I won't deny is hilariously oversized and impractical and just honestly unwieldy by a normal human. But essentially what my last few minutes of rambling, I'm sorry, I just really love the Greatsword. Essentially the best way I can describe it is every time that final strong charge hits, this is what I both see and feel. And it's addictive. It really is. But outside of that subjective, intangible, air quotes, feeling that you get when something truly clicks for you, the weapon itself also ticks a lot of boxes for me. Having the ability to block, while not a great thing to do with a greatsword because it eats away at your sharpness and you should be dodging everything wherever possible anyway, but just knowing it's there adds a kind of level of safety. If you're fighting a new monster or you're seeing a new move, it's kind of a, I'm just gonna block and see what happens. I certainly find myself doing that every now and then. It's also got obviously good reach. You can get to Rathaloses that are being annoying in the air. It lets you really focus fire certain parts of a monster. You need to break a horn, couple full charges on its head, yeah, probably gonna do that. Cut a tail off, same deal. And it really lets you flinch it a lot and get more hits in, knock it over. It lets you feel really precise, not only in its execution of its gameplay with how you do need to be careful and precise with your moments and charges, but it lets you feel super precise in how you take the thing apart, and I really dig that. And expanding on that, I do love the straight up gameplay that it encourages and rewards. This patient hunter, because after all, patience is a skill that every good hunter would have. When you are hunting animals, patience legitimately is key. So the greatsword, I would argue, out of all the weapons, does reward patience the most. You simply cannot be reckless with it as long as you're not fighting something like a frickin' Jagras, and you have to observe the monster, you have to learn its movements, it ticks, how it works, how every single slight shake of its head might mean that it's going to be here for 3 seconds, so you can go there by its back left leg and start charging, and you're always thinking about stuff like that, because of course, knowledge of what it is you're hunting is another hugely important skill for an actual real hunter. So to me, the way that the greatsword encourages you and rewards you for playing meshes really well with what I imagine an actual hunter would need to be good at / do if they were hunting these creatures, and I kind of dig that. You know, I like the nature-y, almost trying to make it somewhat realistic for huge sword-fighting dinosaur game, and I think that's really satisfying to me, and it's really rewarding to know a monster so intimately that you can just start charging in the middle of an open field, knowing that by the time you unleash the final hit, it has moved itself almost like it wants to die in front of you, and you bring it down. The legendary got ya bitch. Got ya bitch! It becomes so synonymous with truly skilled greatsword play, and while I can't do that consistently, I do it every now and then, and it's so much fun to pull off, it really is. On top of getting the shoulder charges to ignore knockback with well-timed, again, timing is everything, and that's something that's really good too, where you can just shoulder charge through moves and continue beating on the thing. Yes, you take the damage, but that almost goes hand in hand with being a greatsword user, right? You have to take the risk sometimes to get those charges, and there's almost this sort of heart-pounding moment of, please don't do that move, please don't do that move, please don't turn around, please don't turn around, please don't move your tail, please don't move your tail while you're charging, and when it does go off, you're like, yeah! Ooh, I did it! And that's really cool as well, especially on a newer monster when you're not completely sure what it's gonna do. So, yeah, there you go. I realize I spent a long time talking about one weapon, but I really do think the greatsword is simply great, and that's why I main it. That's why I consider it like an extension of myself, and it is my go-to weapon for anything. And having to do greatswording but under the time pressure of especially the Nergigante hunt was really cool for me, because I've never really gone for speed kills before. I'd rather take half an hour to kill something and barely take one hit over the entire quest than get it done in half the time having chugged 20 potions, you know? That's the type of player that I am. So it's really cool to be forced into an experience and find myself quite liking a more reckless, faster approach. I definitely think I have developed some skills I previously didn't have, so it's cool to see both sides of the greatsword in that respect. So I would love to know what you guys think of my choices, what are your own weapons of choice, and why have you clicked with it, why have you chosen it. But for now, I will see you very soon for World's actual release. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe for more. I'll see you next